Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I'm your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by my co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It is a week ahead of Thanksgiving, and we thought today might be a good time to sort of pause and reflect on why it is good and why we are thankful to be lawyers. Kind of walking through that, in the context of what we do here at Lifetime Legacy Lawyers, which is helping lawyers launch. And I think when you first start out and go through that discussion and decision to, start your own firm or join a small firm, there's a lot of uncertainties. And if you don't take some time to reflect on why you're doing that and what you're grateful for as a result, you can lose perspective pretty quick. And so I think maybe that's a good topic for today's discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic for today's discussion, talk about why I'm thankful to be a lawyer. And there's just so much that goes into being a lawyer, but one thing that I'm thankful for is just the impact on the community that a lawyer can have. When you hang your own shingle, you don't really think about how much impact you're going to have. Whenever I was in law school, I remember we had kind of a professionalism day at Liberty University, and I think it was a program. You probably had the same thing out in Virginia because I think it was a statewide requirement for the ABA schools, but they talked about professionalism. And I remember one of the attorneys that came in that day talked about his community involvement, community impact. And he said, you can just drive down the street, and if you've practiced a while, you can think about, oh, I've helped that person that lives at that house. I've helped that person that lives at that house. And, it's kind of amazing to think that your law firm can become a pillar in the community. I'm sure that Ray Adler, your partner there at Adler Attorneys, and you yourself feel that with your current practice. And, I'm younger in my practice, but I'm really starting to feel that, and just how much of a positive impact, you can provide to clients and leading them in the right direction with decisions that they have to make, maybe getting them through a difficult season in life. Perhaps it is litigation that they're going through, and you can be there to be their rock and guide them and have those tough conversations that need to be had. It's pretty neat how you can have such an impact on the community.
Agreed. And I think actually Corey Sprunger was kind of talking about that a couple of weeks ago when he guested on the podcast with us, where you're looking out. I think he used kind of the church context in the second level or the balcony level, and looking out over the congregation and seeing all the individuals and the families that have had conversations with you as a lawyer, not necessarily maybe became a client even, but was someone that you were able to help with something going on or answer a legal question that someone may have had. And early on in my career, I remember thinking, boy, just don't bother me with those kind of things. I don't want to think about it. I'm away from that. And I think if you find yourself there, that's something to really pay attention to, because I don't know that that's really a great outcome or a sign of a practice that's being very fulfilling to you. And that's a balance. One of the things I learned about myself was I oftentimes relate better to the individuals than the corporate, if you will. And that fulfillment I get from being a lawyer comes from helping individuals who are in challenging situations, helping small businesses in different things, helping growing businesses. And I think it's because I relate to them. And so that is a fulfillment where I actually feel like I'm adding value and purpose to what's happening. I'm able to answer those questions. And I no longer mind if people come up and ask me legal stuff, because I may be the only lawyer they've ever met. Do I know everything? No, not even close, right? But you can at least answer those questions or give them some things to think about, or recall something in law school that you learned and say, yeah, I remember that from school. I've never experienced it in my day-to-day practice, but this was kind of the theory that went into it. And I can always look into it further for you if you want, or something along those lines. But I think it's just a great thing to be a part of a community, being connected in, when you go out to lunch or what have you, you see people that you've interacted with, or have families and live and work in the same community, and you're all working together to help that community grow and accomplish, a good place for your family to live and be raised. And it's a neat thing.
Yeah, and I got to say, another thing coming off of that point of just the community involvement that you have as an attorney, I'm thankful for the client interaction that comes with being an attorney. That's my favorite part, honestly, to be able to interact with clients and get to know them on some level a little bit. There are some very personal conversations that clients have with an attorney that are a lot different than any other kind of conversation that client might have with another professional. Deep issues, whether it's like family issues or, health issues, just different circumstances in life that the client might be going through. The attorney is there to be able to have those conversations with the client. And, those can be difficult, but sometimes it's just enjoyable. Sometimes it's just enjoyable to get to know a client, kind of find out their story. In my estate planning practice, I end up talking to people at retirement age. So they've had a lifetime. Maybe they've gotten married when they were 18, 19 years old, and they've worked hard and they've saved and everything, had 3 kids, and their kids are doing great. And it's just a happy story. And I talk to people like that. But not everybody has a perfect story, but everybody has something to relate to. And being able to relate to clients and talk with them about not just their estate plan choices, what they want to what has happened to them in life and what circumstances they're under right now. That's really enjoyable for me.
Yeah, and what an honor it is to hear that story and help protect the world that we live in the estate planning world. A lot of times we're helping transition ownership or assets from one generation to another and making sure that's done in a good way, being a good steward of the resources that have been obtained. And it's just fascinating to hear the stories that we get to hear. We can't talk about it because it's attorney client privilege, but I
Yeah.
feel like all the time we get just such great life lessons from those who have lived a lot of life. And I can bring my skill set to the table in those certain contexts, but I can't do what they did. And it's so interesting to me to learn. And I just find myself wanting to ask more questions about life where they want to ask questions to me about estate planning, which I love doing. So it's just such a fun interaction. Again, that's a sign of that fulfillment in practice and a practice area that fits well with me personally, where I know that kind of lights me up and I'm excited about it. And I think that shines through when I meet with my clients and they can tell I'm really interested in it and I'm constantly learning about the area of practice and I'm constantly learning about my clients and trying to help them get to a point of peace of mind that their plan is going to do what they want it to do. And so it's a real hand in glove fit, right? To say, boy, this works really well. And obviously, there's other avenues of the law practice that need to be done. And we've all, as lawyers, experienced the case that we took on that wasn't exactly what we wanted to do, but needed to be done at that time. And you do your best with it, and you bring everything you have to it. And you can also learn a lot through those experiences as well. But they are often more trying for you or drain your energy a little bit differently than your primary area of practice. And so, as you think about and reflect on the year, taking a few minutes to be thankful for all the experiences you've had, good or bad, this particular year, it's really helpful to identify those trends of, boy, when I had this kind of day and I went home, I had so much more energy left at the end of the day in the tank versus, and I was just drained. And paying attention to those, I think, is really helpful as you sort of reflect on and are grateful for that opportunity and use that to inform what you're thinking about as you plan for the next season of your practice.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think about, maybe it was a draining day because you didn't have the processes that you needed to have, and you had to go through the same mental anguish to solve a problem that you've solved over and over again. And so you can maybe stay in the same area of practice, but you can change how that area of practice is working for you and make it better. That's a great point to think about and identify what's draining you and what's energizing you. That's an important part to having a healthy well-being in law practice. I'll tell you another thing that I'm thankful for, particularly as a law firm owner of a small law firm, is being able to manage my own schedule. That's why you do it, right? You go into law practice for yourself so that you can decide what days I'm going to be working, what my hours are going to be, and that kind of thing. And you end up working all the time sometimes, but once it's kind of off the ground and you've got things running, you get a little bit of a breather from time to time, and you can choose, okay, I've got, this, my child's athletic event is happening right now. I can take off a little bit early from work, or I can rearrange my schedule and maybe come in a little bit earlier so that I can leave a little bit later and maybe do my exercise after work in the afternoon. I can make those kinds of decisions. We talked about a few weeks ago about my trip to Orlando and Walt Disney World and things like that, and how we planned for that. But those opportunities become available once you put the work in, and then you put a plan into place to be able to deal with the clients and things like that. You can do it. You can manage your own schedule, and that's a lot of fun, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I second that. And will add to that, I'm thankful for the staff that has agreed to work with me, not
Yeah,
necessarily for me, hopefully,
yeah, yeah,
but that we're working together to allow that to happen. And that's a big thing as you think about their life as well and the needs that their families have. And we often talk about around here just the idea that we are not your family, but we're like family in a way. We want to make sure that we're protecting and looking out for each other as best we can. And I think that echoes the comment that you said of you're always working in a sense because your mind is always thinking, okay, I need to make sure that I'm providing and positioning my firm well to provide for all these people who rely on what we do here for their families and to provide. And it's a big responsibility, especially when you launch that firm. There's a lot of those considerations that come in of, okay, payroll is coming up and I need to do that. And I think pausing to reflect and say, boy, I'm grateful for how all of this works together to where we're able to serve the clients. The clients are happy with that service. And so they provide us with compensation. We're able to take that and use it to provide for our community involvement, including the folks that work with us. And it's just a neat thing. We've talked before about the law firm life cycle and how that works. And it's just really fun to have now a longer vantage point to look back upon and go, yeah, you stay consistent with it over time and you continually to do what I call the daily deposits, and that continues to grow and gets to a point of, okay, now I'm at a plateau where I can kind of see things and I can look back and see how far we've come, and I can look forward and say this is really going to be fun because I want to try these things or try to accomplish these goals as we move. Great uh, sort of confirmation that that's a good fit for your personality of I need that flexibility. I want to provide that for the folks that work with me as well as best we can, as long as we're still getting the work done for the clients and keeping things moving in the right direction.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I learned very quickly that once you have staff, you realize how much you need the staff. So they play a huge role in allowing for that work-life balance to actually take place, and yeah, definitely very thankful for that. Anything else come to mind, Seth, as far as being thankful that you are an attorney in a small firm?
Yeah, I think the other side of that, just keeping on kind of the C theme, right, is the colleagues and the opportunity we have for basically have these kind of conversations, right? You and I have had the intentionality with our particular relationship to make sure that we're touching base, and then we decided, well, we're talking about all this stuff, so maybe we should just record it and share it with others. Certainly they're talking about it, but then even in the larger context of just being an attorney in the state of Indiana. And when I go to CLE presentations, continuing legal education seminars, and different things, just an encouragement to hear from other people and learn from their experience. And some of it's just that confirmation of, oh, you're facing the same challenges we're facing. And yet, just having that collegiality is just a very good part of the practice in Indiana. And it's a lot of fun to have those interactions through a local bar association event or getting to see your colleagues in court. And there's a lot of things that you get benefit from, and that sort of re-energizing, whatever that word is, from that interaction of it's just good to be reminded that there's other people that are like-minded, that are out serving their clients and trying to do the right thing, seek justice and truth, and all the things that lawyers are trying to do as a profession.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's been pretty amazing to develop relationships with other attorneys, including yourself, and develop friendships. And I remember being at a CLE one time, and the speaker, who was an attorney, said, attorneys are my favorite people. And, from an outsider's perspective, that seems really strange because, the world of the law is seemingly so adversarial. And it is a lot of times. And I'm sure there are attorneys who hate each other, but that hasn't been my experience. And I've developed some very good relationships with other attorneys over the years. And it's great to be able to call somebody and ask, hey, what do you think about this issue? I got this, situation going on. What would you do? Kind of helping each other through certain questions. It's a practice, as we say, so we don't always have the perfect answer. These are difficult problems that come up. And so being able to lean on another attorney for a word of advice has been wonderful over the years, and you really need that. I think we've said on the podcast before that having a mentor is really important because you need somebody that's been there, done that, and you just kind of develop those relationships where multiple people are able to serve in that role for you from time to time, and it becomes really meaningful.
Yeah, and it's great for your practice because a client may bring a question to you that you don't know the answer to, and you're not familiar with that area of law. And I often do that with you on elder law questions where I have an understanding of certain aspects, but there are specifics that apply to that client situation that really need the experience and the expertise that someone else has. And so you bring that value to your clients by virtue of the quality of your relationships. And that's just a cool thing over time. And it takes time to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. Again, I go back to that concept of that daily deposit. What are you doing every day to increase that a little bit? And are you pursuing and being intentional about those relationships? We talked about that in terms of just getting out and about in your community and getting to know people as well, trying to balance the busyness of the practice and the hustle of getting things off the ground and all those things. But again, take that time to pause and reflect, and you count up all of the relationships that you've developed over the course of a year, and the new people that you've met, and the new clients that you've served, and the existing clients that you've been able to engage with again. What a huge thing. And it's really fun. And it just kind of gets you that, all right, things are doing well. And if they're not, maybe it identifies, hey, this is because this is a draining thing to me, and it's not really right or in keeping with my personality. And maybe I need to make some adjustments there and pursue a different path down the road. So just all kinds of value, I think, in doing that reflective process and sort of counting your blessings as we think about this Thanksgiving season.
Yeah, wonderful thoughts there, Seth. I think that will probably do it for today. Definitely thankful to be a lawyer. And what's the best way for people to check out the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast?
The easiest way, I think, to find us is to get out on YouTube and just search for Lifetime Legacy Lawyers, and our feed will pop up there. I was talking to you just before we pressed record, so to speak. We're moving the audio feed for the audio version of the podcast into the same tool that we do the YouTube podcast through. So that shouldn't interrupt anything, but there may be some instructions we need to send out there to make sure that the audio feed shows up in your Apple Podcast or Spotify player, whatever you use to deliver audio podcasts.
That sounds great. Appreciate you doing that for us. I think that will do it for today. We're the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast, helping lawyers launch. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Thomas.